Dumelang, Sanbonani, and a very good morning, afternoon, or evening to each and every one of you beautiful people out there. Thank you so much for stopping by, and welcome back to the Dumo Show, where we talk all things motivation, education, and of course, entertainment. We did speak about in the previous episode the state of flow, and because it is still Flow Feb, we are continuing with that. And today we will be talking about the characteristics of flow as well as why you might sometimes find it a bit challenging to reach the state of flow. But before that, a quick recap of what we went through in the previous episode. We spoke about the state of flow, which is when you have complete control and concentration on a singular talk on a singular task, so much so that everything else seems to become irrelevant. And within this state, you feel like you can continue doing that task forever. We spoke about the benefits of the state of flow, some of which include happiness and fulfillment that you receive from being in the state of flow, and enhancements in your performance, as well as increased motivation and creativity that's brought about by the state of flow. We spoke about how you reach the state of flow. How do you do that? You put yourself in a familiar environment, a place that you're familiar with. You eliminate all distractions. We'll be talking about that a little later on. And of course, you quieten your internal dialogue. And then you focus on the one task at hand. And with that, let's talk about some of the characteristics of flow. And this is how I've structured it, because I believe this is the most chronological way that you can look at the characteristics of flow. So the first thing, of course, would be number one, you have a clear goal that is set and you are working towards it. And this, of course, leads me to number two, which is you have control over the situation and the outcome thereof because the goal you have is clear. You set your goal and you know you're working towards it. So when you start the task, you already know the outcome you want and you're working towards achieving that. Number three, you have a strong sense of focus and concentration on the task at hand. An example of this could be when you're reading a book and everything else around you seems to disappear because of the amount of concentration you have on that singular book. Sometimes you may wonder, how do people listen to music and read a book at the same time? Sometimes it's because the two can work hand in hand, because the music complements the writing, or it could be because of the state of flow. They are reading and they're so concentrated on the book that the music later on becomes irrelevant, and it's almost as if it's not there. Number four would be that you lose the feeling of self-consciousness and you reach a state of serenity, a place where you feel centered and serene. Number five, you lose any and all awareness that you may have on a regular basis when it comes to your physical needs, such as eating. And you only realize once you're out of the state of flow, once you've completed the task, only then do you realize how hungry you actually are. For example, say you're playing a sport and you find yourself in a state of flow. Back in the days, now I'm talking before the time of social media, before the time of video game consoles, most of us used to play outside. And it's only once you see the street light turn on that you realize you're supposed to be home by this time. And that's when you leave the state of flow because there was something that disrupted you from the state of flow, that being the street light coming on. Number six, and this is probably my personal favorite of the seven characteristics, and this is the loss of trekking time. You seem to lose all trace of time when you're in the state of flow. An example that I could use of this is back when I was still writing my debut novel, which is, of course, A Dubious Alliance, available electronically, internationally. When I was still writing, I often found myself, and this happened over consecutive days, I found myself in a state of flow where I might have started writing at maybe 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock at night. I committed to writing for about an hour or so, nothing more than 2 hours, nothing less than an hour. But once I had completed what I wanted to write, I realized that it's almost midnight, and sometimes, in some cases, it was 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock in the morning. That was the state of flow kicking in, regardless of what the initial intent was, regardless of the time scale you had given yourself. Once you're in the state of flow, all of those things seem to disappear. And of course, number seven is that you may experience, and this doesn't always apply, it of course applies to depending on what task you are performing, you receive immediate feedback. And the reason why this happens is because when you're in a state of flow, you're singular, you're in oneness. And what this means basically is that everything you think, feel, experience, believe, perceive about yourself, the world, those around you, everything that you see, feel, touch, it's all in oneness with who you are. So all the focus is completely on the task at hand and not on the environment around you. And those are the seven characteristics of the state of flow. Now we're just going to look at some of the things that might stop you from reaching the state of flow. The first one, of course, being distractions. Now, distractions come in different shapes, forms, such as people might be a distraction to your state of flow. You might be trying to complete a particular task, say at work, maybe, and there's that one coworker who's constantly trying to speak to you. You might like them, you might not like them, but they are stopping you from reaching the state of flow. Sometimes these distractions could be other tasks, such as having to go cook, having to drive, having to do the laundry. All these tasks that you find yourself needing to perform during the period of your day that distract you from whatever task you want to do that's going to allow you to reach the state of flow. These are distractions. And the biggest distraction of all is probably technology. Your cell phone, your laptop, your tablet, whatever it might be. That one device or those few devices that are constantly vibrating or ringing because there's a notification from someone, because there's a call from someone, because something is happening somewhere in the world and you getting notified of that. All those things are distractions from the state of flow. The next thing that might stop you from reaching the state of flow is, of course, internal dialogue. And I mentioned this a bit in the previous episode. Your internal dialogue is that inner voice that you have, and all of us have it, is that inner voice that tells you you can't do it, or it's impossible, or it's never been done. It's that small voice that you have in your mind that's trying to stop you from achieving what you are trying to do. And then finally, and this is probably the worst of all, the imagination of the negative. This is a very big point when it comes to things that hinder you from reaching the state of flow. And the reason why I say it's probably the biggest is because your imagination you could use in a positive way or you could use in a negative way. And within this context, we are speaking about it in a negative way. And the reason why it would stop you from reaching a state of flow is because your mind or your imagination creates scenarios that you throw yourself into, which are unlikely to happen in reality. But your mind creates these scenarios and it makes you live through them, mentally speaking, even though they may never happen. Now, distractions, internal dialogue, and the imagination of the negative are the biggest factors that could stop you from reaching your state of flow. And with that being said, just to recap everything we've spoken about, the states of flow, an experience that you have when you're in singular, focused on a particular task, the benefits of flow being happiness and fulfillment, the enhancements of your performance, increased motivation as well as creativity. How you reach the state of flow by putting yourself in a familiar environment, such as somewhere in your house, eliminating distractions such as devices, other tasks that could wait, people who might stop you from reaching the state of flow, quietening your internal dialogue by telling that inner voice you have to keep quiet for a couple of hours, then focusing on that one task at hand. The characteristics of the state of flow were setting clear goals, having full control over the situation and the outcome of the goals. Number 3, having a strong sense of focus and concentration on the task, losing the feeling of self-consciousness in order to reach a state of serenity, losing any and all awareness that you may regularly have to physical needs, losing track of time, and finally, immediate feedback. Then, what stops you from reaching the state of flow? Distractions, internal dialogue, and the imagination of the negative. And with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the end of Flow Fib and the state of flow. Thank you so much for tuning in. I do trust and hope that you learned something new today, something that you didn't know previously that is going to help you in future. From myself, from everyone at the studio, trust and hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Salute.